Hello and welcome to Big Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight we will be delving into one of the most significant security issues that Pakistan is facing today. That is the threat of TTP or Khawarij that is emerging from Afghan soil. And of course, we know that in the recent times, this threat is of course increasing each day. Despite repeated demands from Pakistan, the Afghan Taliban have failed to restrain these threats or to neutralize these anti-Pakistan elements. Instead, the recent statements from Afghan officials indicate that they are providing safe havens to these elements, with terrorist violence increasing to almost and more than 70% in year 2024, and over 59% of these attacks were on security forces of Pakistan. We need to do, of course, we need more commitments from Afghan officials, and in today's program we will be talking about different dimensions of this issue, what needs to be done, especially when we know that United Nations and other stakeholders have of course indicated TTP and other elements as terrorist groups. In today's program, we will be talking about all these different dimensions and how these external threats, Khawarij, are of course implicating and threatening internal security of Pakistan. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Major General retired Zahid Mehmood, who is security analyst. Welcome to the program. Major General Zahid, of course, when we talk about these elements that and threats that are emanating from Afghan soil, the recent statement, especially of Interior Minister of Afghan interim government, shows that they are treating them as guests. How do you think this shows the dual policy of Afghan government?
Thank you very much, Maryam, for the invite. I think this is an extremely challenging situation for both Pakistan and Afghanistan, the way things are developing in this part of the world. Unfortunately, as you have alluded to, that the statements coming from the officials and especially from a senior ranking ministers, you have spoken about the Interior Minister, then there is a statement by the Deputy Foreign Minister as well. So they have been, these are very alarming statements. You know, they're not identifying or they're not recognizing that what is the real issue. As you have spoken about that they are treating them, the TTP, as guests through the Pakhtunwali code. So the big question about this is that yes, in Pakhtunwali you have to take care of your friends, you have to take care of the people who have been supporting you in the past. But what about Pakistan? Why have you forgotten the friendship which has come from Pakistan?
And what about Doha Agreement,
Yes.
Of course, we cannot forget that in Doha Agreement, Afghan Taliban, of course, their commitment to international community was that they are not going to be letting these elements use Afghan infrastructure or Afghan soil for terrorist activities. So what about that commitment?
Maryam, this is the problem. In fact, this Afghanistan, I always, when I talk about Afghanistan, we have a lot of stories of betrayal, a lot of stories of forgetting the sacrifices, a lot of stories of forgetting the huge sacrifice which Pakistan has made. And this story of betrayal is from both, from United States of America as well as Afghanistan. You know, the Mujahideen, erstwhile Mujahideens, who got a real support from Pakistan, and they were able to vacate Afghanistan from the Russian invasion. They were able to face Russian invasion. Those Mujahideens and the United States, of course, they used us in both the wars against Russia, and then once they came against Afghan Taliban's, they had huge support. We have sacrificed the most and we have suffered the most. But again, going back to Pakhtunwali and the friendship and the statements which are coming from Afghanistan, I always ask them these questions, that what about that? But we are very clear now, Maryam, unfortunately, they're using this code of conduct, they're using their traditions, they're using their history in a way to cover up their support to the acts of terrorism in Pakistan, their support to the proxy war by India their support to the state-sponsored terrorism, which is being emanated by India through the soils of Afghanistan, and they are part of the economic benefits which I am sure they're getting from all this terrorism, because they are unable to govern Afghanistan the way the people of Afghanistan deserved. But still, Maryam, I would say the political voices, those political analysts and all that, they are also talking about, they are at least talking about the negotiations with Pakistan. Our envoy was also there in Afghanistan. They're talking about the reconciliation. They're talking about solving the issues on the table. But those who are related with the security and the military aspect of the Afghan government. You know, this is the, this government is...
Right, but
yes.
Mr. Zahid, how can we engage with Afghan interim government when they are going for a dual policy? And especially after a long time, Khair Khwa's public admission of providing shelter to these elements. How do you think Pakistan should be moving forward?
You see, at least we should continue engaging Afghanistan at all fronts, you know, diplomatically, then the government to government, and militarily also. You know, when I speak about the military engagement, this includes all the kinetic application and as well as the military to military talk, you know, as far as the border management is concerned, things like that, where we can collaborate. At least we should look for some convergences of interest. But again, your question is very valid. It depends upon the will of the people, the government of Afghanistan, whether this interim government has, now there is a doubt, huge doubt on the will and of the national government, interim government in Afghanistan.
And also capacity remains a question mark as well.
Exactly.
And we will be talking about that later in the program. To talk more about this, we are now joined online by Brigadier retired Waqar Khan, who is security analyst. Welcome to the program. And we are also joined by Mr. Zahir Shah Sherazi, who is a Pakistan-Afghan affairs expert. Welcome to the program. Brigadier Waqar, let me start with you. Of course, when we look at the stats, we know that there is more than 70% increase in terrorist attacks in Pakistan, which is alarming. In your opinion, what were the failures and where do Pakistan need to strengthen its counter-terrorism measures?
I think Pakistan policy has been consistent. The only thing was that after the Taliban too came into power, there was a hope that things would settle down because definitely Pakistan health and morally, definitely some of their families were staying here. And that's why I think Zahid also pointed out that what about that? But I think I'll go very, very blunt and state. What has happened now is that basically Taliban think that they can use terrorism as a tool of policy, force Pakistan into drawing concession. And we know what are the concession to have this illegal spectrum going on. Maybe, you know, let's say revert the erstwhile FATA into again FATA, and they can play their game and also expand, you know, their influence as far as finances are concerned. So there are some reports now coming from even American media, some of their outlets like Sarah Adams. I mentioned that even US is funding like $87 million a week, you know, cash coming from Switzerland to Iraq and then flown by aircraft. So who's funding Taliban for what? How much it is going to people of I think Afghanistan is a big question. The main thing is that now I would say, and then India has also jumped in. There are reports that they are also funding of supplying some concourse anti-tank guided missiles, and they were displayed by the Taliban also. So it means that the proxies are hot again, and Afghanistan has become an epicenter of terrorism. And Pakistan is now, I think, called the bluff. The good thing is that we've realized that this policy of appeasement is not going to work. So on all fronts now, Pakistan has to go on the offensive. And I feel that Taliban has also lost, you know, whatever support they had in Pakistan. Because when you start killing innocent people just for drawing or becoming, I would say, a hired gun, it doesn't work, I think. They've also annoyed all the neighbors, like Iran is annoyed. They're building a wall. Russia, Central Asia, China, everybody's actually questioned them on 28th September and followed by Moscow format on 4th October, very clearly told them to shut down these you know, factories of terror. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I think there are a lot of leverage that we should now start applying. Diplomatically, we have been able to, I think, garner.
Of course. Of course, Brigadier Sab, we will be talking about those later in the program, but let me first bring Mr. Zaher into the discussion. Mr. Zaher, when we look at the stats, of course, they show that more than 800 attacks on Pakistan were, of course, from Afghan soil. How does it reflect on Afghan Taliban's policies towards fighting terrorism?
Well, thank you very much. I would just take forward what Brigadier Waqar was saying. I think Afghan Taliban or the Kabul administration, perhaps they are not perhaps able to take action. One cue is that. The second one is perhaps they don't want to take action against their half brothers or their cousins who they believe are living in Afghanistan and out of the Pashtun Wali code of conduct, perhaps they are not asking them to leave. The second thing is mostly they are now still following the policy of tribalism and protecting their guests. What we often speak to them, they have a justification for that. But now Kabul is a full-fledged government. They claim to be a government, and now they have to realize that they have international obligations to follow. They have to keep their promises at Doha. And one thing that the international coalition, they have again left Afghanistan into a turmoil. The reason is they have imposed a Taliban rule on the Afghan people, which is not an inclusive government, but it's just the government of a few people who wanted to have their own brand of Islam, and they wanted to establish an Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This is one side. The second thing is, I think, the proxies, which now is a very open secret. The ISK is very much installed there. Why they have been brought in, the charter helicopters there installed on the Pak-Afghan border. We must be discussing it very openly now. We have to convey the American-led coalition that if such like games are going on, the problems would be there. Perhaps the Americans and the international coalition have their own interest. They wanted to keep an eye on the Chinese operations here. They wanted to keep an eye on the Taliban, and they also want to, keep an eye on Pakistan. So this border area is again used as a proxy battlefield, which is not in the benefit of
Of course,
any of the region.
That remains an important question. But Mr. Sherazi, like you earlier alluded to Doha Agreement, and of course, in your opinion, are there some mechanisms that can make Afghan Taliban adhere to those commitments?
Well, some of the sources I have spoken to in the Afghan government, perhaps now, after the recent visit of Ambassador Sadiq, perhaps he had very clearly conveyed that the Taliban have to take care of the Fitna al-Khawarij or the TTP and all those proxies in the form of ISK, BLA, BNA, or TIP, and they have to, address this issue very seriously, because Pakistan now feels that the internal security threat apart, but most of this threat is coming across the border, and Afghan soil is used now. They have sufficient and evidence which had been provided to the Kabul government. There is a theory again now. Perhaps a friendly country has agreed to, relocate these hardline TTP or the banned TTP and Fitna al-Khawarij militants to some part in the Ghazni, and for that, I think this rehabilitation and revival, this friendly country is likely to support, extend financial support to Taliban, but that is not the solution. The message is very clear. The people who are threatening Pakistan's security have to be taken care. And what Pakistan can do on the foreign office level, perhaps they have to engage the Central Asian states, China, Russia, because these countries are also facing the same situation. Perhaps these proxies which are operating, they are like fighting just for money. They don't have any agenda or a wider establishment of a Khorasan like Islamic Emirate, which the ISK is doing. But ISK is a huge proxy which will be used against the Central Asians, which will be used against the Russians, which is used against the Chinese, and perhaps this sectarian violence which is going on in Pakistani side. I think most of those ISK militants are involved in that. Iran would also be feeling this brunt. So perhaps the regional countries have to be very serious about this threat. They have to convey Afghanistan that if it really wanted to live in peace with its neighbor, whether it's China or Iran or Pakistan, it has to follow the international norms. It has to obey the international obligations. Otherwise, I think there is no room for them. They cannot, either they would be on the side of the terrorists who are threatening China, Pakistan, Russia, or they have to, live like a country to, respect the sovereignty of other countries and their citizens.
Right, right. And Zahid, when we talk about all these aspects, how does Fitnat al-Khawarij's alliances with such groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda and others threaten the regional security? And also, why do you think that Afghan Taliban seem indifferent to international condemnation of the acts of these Fitnat al-Khawarij?
Look, Maryam, there is always a nexus of the proxies. You know, the modern warfare, unfortunately, it is being conducted through the proxies, even by the bigger powers. We have seen what is happening in Middle East, and same thing is happening in Afghanistan and in this part of the world. I'm worried about if there is any nexus of, the main competitor against of Washington is China. So China is in this part of the world. They have the, lot of economic activity through BRI. Then China, Russia are also asserting, and they are very important members in the SCO. And the proscribed organizations about which we all are talking about, they have their house in, they're well entrenched in Afghanistan. So there are around 20 proscribed organizations, out of which around 15, 16 are directly involved in actions against Pakistan, and there are others like ETM, ISIS. So they have the objectives in China, they have the objectives in Russia, and this SCO and BRI, these are also, sometimes I feel that they are also part of a, Washington must be having some designs about that. So if these nexus are there, then the proxies are used to stop the activities or the progress through these, then we have a very serious situation in this part of the world. But in the West also, in United States especially, the debate has started, the debate has already been generated, and there is talk about the resurgence of ISIS and ISIL, So the people are talking about that. And they are talking about their presence in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan can once again, be a spot from where there is a lot of international terrorism emanating from this part of the land. So that's why I always say that Pakistan has to engage with the international community, with the West, about the future of Afghanistan. As Brigadier Waqar was talking about $47 million a week, which is being pumped in, which is being given to Afghanistan. I think this is a huge amount. Where it is going, because we are not seeing any socio-economic development of Afghanistan, but we're seeing the resurgence of terrorist groups, lot of weapons coming into that, lot of, again, the whole paradigm of the politics, whole paradigm of the economic activity, everything, illegal spectrum, everything is connected with terrorism, proxies and all that. So Afghanistan is again becoming a hub for international, it's a big threat to the international peace.
Of course.
Not only to regional peace, but to international peace.
Of course, as long as there is instability in Afghanistan, it remains, of course, vulnerable and a threat not only to Pakistan, but to regional stakeholders and to globe as well. But talking about across, of course, counter-terrorism measures, Brigadier Waqar, how has Pakistan's Western border management regime strengthened its defense against cross-border management?
I think if you look at the strategy of Azm Istikam, which is basically continuation of our old policy with more vigor and I would say enthusiasm, there are other, I think, aspects which have to actually fill up, because if you just look at border management, just one part. So actually, Pakistan has to do it on different domains, like diplomatic. We've talked. One is, of course, bilateral, which includes engaging them diplomatically. And Pakistan was the first one to hold their, let's say, conference for investment for Afghanistan, Islamabad. We have forgotten it. Then, of course, including the regional countries with the same, let's say, I would say, understanding of the situation, and that's where I think our foreign office has succeeded. And then comes, a physical management of the border, which is a passive measure like fencing, like biometric system, holding the crossing points, and then, of course, intelligence-based operations inside Pakistan, which are taking place, and as figures given by the ISPR, 60,000 almost in a year, so you can count that almost 200 150, 200 operations per day. That's a huge number. Then comes, of course, transfrontier in case there is a requirement like this time Pakistan. I think this year is displayed twice, one in March and one recently that when we have clear information and Taliban, let's say, are not controlling, then Pakistan takes on. Or in case there is an assault on, let's say, border, our forces took them on. They need to have capacity building for the police and law enforcement. It becomes actually the, I would say, prime front line in Pakistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And seriousness of the, I think, chief minister, especially KP, which was again pointed out that in case you have poor governance, in case you have, I would say, gaps in security, ultimately the cost is paid by law enforcement in form of blood. So that should not happen.
Right, right. And when we talk about different counter-terrorism measures, Mr. Sherazi, what's your take on Pakistan's direct strikes within Afghanistan? Do you think in this year, in 2025, we are going to be having this policy implemented, and is it feasible in the long term?
Well, what I believe, I think Pakistan has the right to take every measure to safeguard its security. One, repeatedly we have conveyed that along the Pak-Afghan border, especially in Kunar, in Paktia, and some other areas, there is a huge presence of those fitna al-Khawarij and anti-state, anti-Pakistani operational militant groups. So obviously Afghanistan either have to take action against them or it must be sharing its intelligence with Pakistani security forces to counter those attacks. But actually, we have seen that these organized militant groups are, in scores of, they are attacking the Pakistani security checkposts. So I think it's justified that Pakistan should be taking action against all those elements, and we should not be following now the policy of containment. Actually, we have to be aggressive. As Brigadier Sahab was mentioning, actually, the policy of containment won't work. So this is a measure which we have to take, on along the border and on the other side of the border. But importantly, we have to put our house in order too. The poor governance, obviously, it's a huge issue. The kinetic operations have worked a lot. We have dislodged militants from their nerve centers in North and South Waziristan. Bajod has been cleared. Mumand has been cleared. But now, actually, this porous border and the sympathizers which are living on both sides of the border, the unfinished agenda of National Action Plan in the form of Operation Azam Istikam, it should be continuing. But importantly, the National Action Plan, as it was designed, if it could have been implemented in letter and spirit at that time, not only in the tribal areas, but the urban Pakistan. You have to go against all those sympathizers and militant groups which are based in Punjab, which are based in Karachi, which are sympathizing with those militants, which are providing them finances. I think this is a collective strategy which have to be now implemented by both the provincial as well as the federal government. At the policy level, I would say I think the provincial government has no capability to take care of those counter-terrorism measures. The counter-terrorism department is not so much equipped. We have to invest in that. Actually, the frontier constabulary, which is mostly on a duty in on the VVIPs and the elites in the urban parts of Pakistan, I think it should be called back, and the buffer zone, which obviously have to be managed by such a force, because police, I think, after the merger of tribal areas into mainstream Pakistan, the police don't have the capacity to take care of those counter-terrorism measures inside the tribal areas, especially along the border.
Building, of course, remains a key issue in this regard as well. But taking the same question to you, General Zahid, when we talk about Western border management, and we know that over 90% of this border force have been completed, but still there are infiltration attempts. Why do you think there are persistent infiltration attempts alongside Pak-Afghan border?
Well, Maryam, it is very clear that the Afghanis, even Afghan government and the security forces, Taliban as well. They don't want to have a very well managed border between Pakistan and Afghanistan because of the illegal spectrum which is attached, huge economy is attached. So they want to create a kind of a unrest in those areas, especially kind of a buffer zone or something, that this border always remains, because it's not there, it is not as per their designs of having a peaceful and very well managed border, because they have nothing to lose, to be very honest, in Afghanistan. Pakistan is a country which is run by a state apparatus, which has a proper system of governance. So this is a real state. To be very honest, today I don't feel that Afghanistan is functioning as a state has to be function in an order. So there is a government which is a byproduct of the war. There is a government for which the terrorism and the war and the weapon, that has been the major instrument of their policy. Even if it's their social policies, their economic policies, their war policy, everything was associated with the weapons and the, so they want to keep these countries, this area like that. So once there will be a strong border management, of course it will challenge their interest. So that's why they're not, so it has to, both the countries has to be serious about it. That's why the international community and especially the regional communities, the regional countries, they will have to, because this threat is towards Tajikistan, towards China, towards Pakistan. Pakistan is very clear. Pakistan is interested in the socio-economic development of every Afghani. We have hosted them in Pakistan. We are suffering because of unstable Afghanistan. Whatever is happening in Pakistan today, unfortunately, we are right, Zahid Shah Sahab was right to put our own house in order. But mostly things which has put our house in a bad shape has come from Afghanistan. Even our social system has been broken because of this country. Our economic system, our security, everything has been affected by whatever has happened in Afghanistan. So we are interested to have a stable Afghanistan. Our foreign office has already clarified that if they want to have good relations with economic relations with India, we have no issues, because if there is going to be an economic activity in Afghanistan, it will help towards the stability in Afghanistan. Pakistan is not interested in any kind of approach, Afghani approach towards any other country. We are only interested in a stable, moving forward Afghanistan, which will of course help us achieve our stability. So that's
talking about achieving stability, of course, it goes hand in hand with economic stability. Mr. Sherazi, in your opinion, what role can China and Russia play in influencing Afghan Talibans to stop harboring terrorists?
The Chinese government has very clearly conveyed to Taliban that they have to rein in the TIP, Turkestan Islamic Party militants, or the Uyghur militants, because we have seen that Imran Turkestani and some of the other militant groups, they had been sighted along the Pak-Afghan border. And actually a dangerous aspect of this is now you don't have to be physically engaging the people, because this e-terrorism are engaging the youngsters and the youth online and luring them into the militant activities. We have seen this the Peshawar police lines attack. The police cop was actually engaged via the email and other such like tools, and then he managed to carry out that attack. So such like activities also need to be curbed. But now China has also handed over a list of more than 400 those Uyghur militants to Kabul, that if it really wanted to have Chinese help in some financial assistance and including it into the BRI and CPAC project, it has to hand over those militants. Perhaps the talks are going on that side. Now again, the change of command in the United States, it would be affecting more the region, I would say, because the Trump administration would be more focused on China and even the Ukraine war. So obviously Russians do have problems with them, because if Afghanistan's bordering areas, especially the Waqar belt, which is now very much in the light, perhaps the militant groups can use that region also against Russia and China. So that is very important, because now Russians are also concerned, Chinese are also concerned. They have expressed their anger rather to the Kabul government, that they have to take care of not only the ISK and all those elements which are threatening their security. So obviously the regional solution would be very important. Pakistan must be engaging China. Pakistan must be talking to Russia as well as the Central Asian states, and most importantly, Saudi Arabia, which in one way or the other was a guarantor in the Doha Agreement. The UAE government, I think, perhaps the Taliban and the United States do have offices in Qatar very close. So obviously, all these stakeholders are the people who had been involved in the Doha Agreement. They must be conveyed very clearly that the security of Pakistan and the region is very important. If they, in any case, wanted to destabilize Pakistan again, I think it would have very dangerous repercussions, not only for Pakistani state, but also for the regional countries. And we should not be in any way allowing again the Pak-Afghan border belt to become another proxy war. But this time, this proxy war is more or less economic proxy war to, strangulate Pakistan's economy, and the international stakeholders, including India and all those who have interest in this region, they are very much threatening Pakistan's economic stability, which in no way can be allowed. So obviously, Pakistan have a lot of issues to address, and the regional approach, I would suggest that it would be more important to engage the regional countries in countering and increasing counter-terrorism measures in this region.
Right, and talking about increasing counter-terrorism measures, Brigadier Waqar, when we talk about intelligence-based operations carried out by Pakistan security forces, in your opinion, how effective have they been? Of course, we know that the stats show that over 900 terrorists have been killed. And also, my second question is that do you think that there is some kind of joint Pakistan-Afghanistan intelligence-based sharing mechanism is required that can be monitored by the regional stakeholders at this point in time?
I think in terms of sharing information, that has been done, and I think somehow to not produce the desired result, especially what was shared with the Afghan Taliban. I'll just highlight that Pakistan now needs a hybrid, I would say, strategy. We have discussed intelligence-based operation, diplomacy. There's also a factor of Afghan social factor. Uh, Actually, it's become a pressure cooker. Somehow it's not discussed. It's becoming so much difficult for Taliban to hold sway. Like you have Northern Resistance Front now almost attacking on daily basis. And because Tajikistan has a threat, like we have Mr. Gulmarat Khalimov, who's basically an special forces of Tajikistan, now in the Khar province and trying to now build up, let's say, test network against Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and also indirectly threatening Russia. So it means that, and if you look at the current engagement, Tajikistan, that's part of the same strategy. The other is how do you address the common Afghan inside? Because even look at transit trade or the Afghans who are legally staying in Pakistan, this is a huge potential. Human rights, Pakistan never spoke about it because we thought that it is their internal matter, but now Pakistan should start, I think, joining the international community. What has happened to almost 20 million women who are locked in their houses, not allowed to even, let's say, study. And the other is, I think, all the resistance movement inside Afghanistan. If a push comes to shove, then I think Pakistan will have to consider those options also. And also, like what I think Turkey did with the Syria, like Syrians who were refugees in Turkey, they became, I would say, a Turkish constituency. So maybe those legal Afghans who are here, Pakistan should engage them and also develop the human resource. In the long run, this becomes your constituency against, I would say, a hardline government which is hell bent on basically using terrorism as a tool of policy. All other, I think we require a hybrid model. Yes, I'm sure that with this strategy, in case Taliban start behaving like a normal state, then of course we are very happy, and I think it will be a win-win situation. But in case it's prolonged, and let's say we daily receive the threats and the rhetoric, which I think has no base at all. I'll just give you an example of let's say GDP. Afghanistan is $12 billion, and only Faisalabad is $75 billion. So that's the kind of, I think, economic potential Pakistan has versus Afghanistan. But I would not like to use these leverages negatively. But in case, I think, let's say Pakistan is pushed, then Pakistan should have a hybrid strategy covering all these angles.
Right, right. And Jana Zahid, when we talk about different aspects of this issue, we cannot forget that Pakistan has recently labeled these elements, TTP and other such terrorist elements, as Al-Khawarij. How significant, in your opinion, was this step in discrediting their extremist ideology, especially if we talk about it in the whole historical context of Khawarij from Islamic point of view?
Maryam, unfortunately, I think every Pakistani is very much clear that there was no ideology. It was all charade. So they were just waging this war on this ideology of Islamist ideology. They were Khawarij and they are Khawarij and they will remain so. Unfortunately, the West and especially Washington, you know, the supreme terms of Muslim soldier, you know, like Islamist, like a jihadi or a mujahid. So sometimes I feel that they were deliberately given to these Khawarij to create, you know, to to give them an opportunity to create an ideology, you know, and then the actual military of Pakistan or actual military of the Islamic countries, they look like a missionaries, you know, something like that. So there is a design behind the creation of Taliban's. You know, in creation of TTP, it took a lot of economics and a lot of time to coin these terms. Every now and then you will start finding new terms. HTS, at least we have heard in a recent past. We never heard of this HTS before, at least in this part of the world. So there is a thinking behind all this, what is happening. Because as I've already said, and Sherazi Sahab also already said, that the future is going to be, what to talk of future, even the present wars are being fought by the proxies. So these proxies will be available to many powers in the world to attain their political objectives through military instrument. So we will keep finding that, you know, such terms and such things coming up. But as far as every Pakistani is concerned, they are very much clear they have to do nothing with Islam. They don't even have the ideology, what to talk of a superior ideology. They make use of the, you know, innocent people. They make use of the breeding ground which is available in Pakistan and countries like Afghanistan, because there's lack of socio-economic development, there's lack of education, because of many other reasons. So they can easily, you know, fool people around them, you know, on the name of Islam. Then people in our erstwhile FATA and, you know, FATA region and these Afghanistan, they're more religious, they're extremely religiously motivated people, you know. So it's very easy for them to, you know,
and also we have vulnerable youth in those areas, of course.
There is
so it is important to discredit their ideological ambitions that are wrongly attributed to Islam. Coming to you, Mr. Sherazi, how does United Nations Security Council's July report, July 2024 report on TTP is going to be impacting, or it influences their perception in terms of terrorist activities?
I think the TTP, Fitna al-Khawarij, has been declared one of the dangerous group, perhaps not only threatening Pakistan's security, but also the nexus which it has with the ISK, with you know, TIP and other. I have very close sources with whom I have discussed. Perhaps now the TIP, ISK and TTP, they have joined hands in training those most of those attacks which was carried out, like in Dasu against the Chinese interests. Some of them even in Balochistan. They are you know, jointly orchestrated and carried out. But coming again to what General Zahid was mentioning, the radicalization of this region, this is very important. I think the Nebraska University's radicalization plan was very much there when an extremist ideology of you know, extremist Islam was infused and rather promoted in the madrasas and schools along the Pak-Afghan border, especially in the tribal areas as well as the Afghan side of the border. Perhaps actually that fight against what those in those times it was considered a jihad, but it actually graduated and transformed into a kind of a militant activity, and then it became terrorism, because once Russians were sent out of Afghanistan, all these militant groups, they had close coordination, the Al-Qaeda, the ISK, now the TTP. So this was one thing, but the de-radicalization plan by the US-led coalition, it was never implemented, and that is the reason now we are suffering. That extremist Islam still being infused in the people, the poor people living, especially along the Pak-Afghan border, mostly the Pashtun belt. And those madaris and schools, they were constantly being pumped in, funded. Because some of our Islamic countries, they were also to blame because they pumped in a lot of money in those madaris, which is unchecked. And that is the reason the Pakistani state is again demanding that regularizing the financing and the budgets of these madaris. So actually, we have to be very realistic that not only at the home level, we have to take up these issues very seriously at the UN level even, because Pakistan is being threatened. Pakistan is being gagged in again into a war, which had never been its war, and now the new war, which is being kind of planned and propagated along the Pak-Afghan border again, because of providing safe haven to the proxies. And these proxies are dangerous for everyone. Everyone can pay them, and they can use them for their own interests. And some of the people I've spoken to, perhaps now a fighter has been offered $1,500 to $2,000 per month. So this is a huge amount of money, and from where that money is coming, I think the proxies who wanted to destabilize Pakistan, China, even fight Russia, the Central Asian states, even Iran, perhaps they would be providing that money. And we know who those people are, and they are very much clear.
Right, right. And Brigadier Waqar, lastly, with this evolving and continuous threat that is emanating from Afghan soil, what is the way forward for Pakistan?
I think Pakistan should continue with the policy within and without, as we have discussed. And I think the borderline, I think the bottom line is that Afghanistan has never been a stable country. For last 200 years and last 40 years, there have been two superpower occupations themselves create, kind of instability. We have to manage them on day-to-day basis. And I think all the prongs, military, economic, psychosocial, and diplomatic, has to be applied to basically convince, I think, the Afghan government that this is a losing war. They are fighting and they'll be isolated.
Right, right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Waqar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Zahir Shah Sherazi, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Major General Retired Zahid Mehmood, for joining us in today's program. Of course, as we conclude today's discussion, it is clear that the threat that is emerging and emanating from Afghan soil is continuous. And TTP and Fitnat al-Khawarij continue to, of course, play their activities from Afghan soil with, of course, with continuous security that is being provided to them from interim Afghan government. And Pakistan need to do more, and of course we are pushing for more at the international and diplomatic level as well. But at the same time, the international community needs to do more to, of course, scatter this threat that is emanating from Afghanistan, which is going to be a threat for regional as well as global security. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.